Welcome again on our Top Innovator series. Welcome on our YouTube Live and LinkedIn Live channels. It's a pleasure to have you here again. This is where we dive into proven leadership ideas, game-changing strategies, and of course, the brilliant minds behind them. My name is Joseph Martens. I'm your host, and I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest to you. With us today is Dave Alton. Dave is the CTO with Strategic Information Resources, a managed IT service company based in California. He's also the chair of the Global Cybersecurity Task Force with the Global Technology Industry Association. And today he's with us, and we're delighted to have you here, Dave. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Joseph. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So let's talk leadership. You're clearly established in your leadership journey, super successful, Dave. Tell us, when you reflect on your own journey, what do you think are some of the ingredients for the success that you've had?
I think probably the most success I've had is learning to like people. A lot of times in the tech field, we go into tech because like, oh yeah, I don't want to have to deal with people, and I could just work with a computer and I'm all good. But what really accelerated my career was listening and talking to people and learning about them and what they needed and how I could kind of fill that void.
I'd really appreciate the way you phrased this, right? So sometimes people say it's about the people, and I really appreciate you saying it's about liking people. Say a bit more about that. So how do you get yourself to liking the squeaky team member or the person who always throws the wrench into the wheel? How do you do that?
Yeah, so I always, when I listen to somebody, I always listen for intent, not necessarily content.
Okay.
So when you're listening to somebody and you hear what they say and you're like, oh my gosh, how could they possibly say something like that? It's so mean, or it's wrong, or whatever. If you're listening to their intent, a lot of times that kind of those initial knee-jerk reactions go away, and you don't like get involved emotionally very, very quickly. You really want to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, listening for intent. And in most cases, the intent is a good one, right? It's a positive intent.
Generally, I mean, I'm sure you can find the exceptions somewhere here and there. But for the most part, everybody's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
They just may not be able to express it as well as you can or the way you would understand it.
Yeah. This focus on liking people, is this something that has always been clear to you as being important, or did you start off someplace else, made some kind of discovery or had some experiences and it became clear to you at that point that this is something you really should be focusing on?
Well, so oddly enough, my high school counselor said, oh, you should work with people. You're so good with people. You know how to deal with people and listen. And so even in high school, I heard that, but I didn't, in high school, you don't believe anything your counselor tells you. So I was definitely one of those. And as it turned out, like my first jobs I was working in retail, and I was by far one of the better, I don't know, a salesman, because we weren't really salesmen, but I was one of the better, people on the floor, that I had this following that would come in and talk to me. And all I was doing, I was working at Egghead Software at the time, so I'm really dating myself here. And we were selling, software that was sold on a shelf, right? Nobody knows that concept now. It's all sold online. So we would, have to talk to people and tell them what it was and why it worked and how it would work and, things like that. And my colleagues were, they wanted to play the games and work with the software. I wanted to get people to understand it and why they would do it. And I think that kind of clicked for me early on. And then it kind of snowballed because I kept getting that reinforced as time went forward, of finding ways to really engage with people, and engaging with people requires you like them, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to love them or, they're your best friend or anything, but you have to like them, right?
It certainly helps a lot, right? It makes it certainly a lot easier if you like them instead of having to be in some adversarial conversations the whole time. Yeah.
Sure.
So interesting that you point at that skill of being good with people, liking people, enjoying that connection with people. It's not typical in the tech space. Is that fair to say, or is that okay?
Oh,
got it.
I have a whole cadre of tech degenerates, as I like to call them, that I am constantly coaching on how to be more with the people side versus the tech side, right?
And then the next question is exactly the how here, right? You're probably also looking at building some kind of leadership bench in your organization, making sure there are people who are also liking other people, or at least have the skill to deal with people. How do you infuse that mindset in people who have more of a tech or a content mindset?
Well, I would say first model it, right?
Okay.
So much of what we as leaders need to do isn't what we tell people, it's what we show people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm one of those guys that, like, if the floor needed to be vacuumed, that was not a task that was ever above me. Let me go vacuum the floor, right? I can do that. I know how to do that. Everybody knows how to do that. So it's also never putting, me ahead of somebody else. It's always about finding common ground and then sharing experiences and then setting up frameworks so that those experiences that I share, somebody else can model too. And that's worked pretty well for me. It doesn't always work, of course, but a lot of times just showing up and listening is so rare these days that it shows up in ways that is hard to describe.
Yeah, it's a real gift listening to someone, and it can really land as a gift because so often we don't experience being listened to.
Right.
Yeah,
and being listened to is so much different than being heard, right? Like there's the act of listening. That's an active thing that you have to participate in. You can't if you're going to listen, you have to be active in that listening. You have to say back what people are saying, make sure that you understand, that you're really involving the person that's speaking in that listening conversation.
Yeah. There are many great definitions of listening out there, and the one that resonated with me, and I don't know where I picked it up, so I can't attribute it, it's not mine, is listening means being willing to be changed. And I just love that. I love it, right? Because that's how we have to show up if we're really listening. We have to be ready to change our opinions, our behavior, what we think about a given situation. If we're not, we're just speaking or waiting for time to pass.
Yeah, agreed.
Let me take another look at your leadership journey from a different perspective. Talk to me about your mentors. So when you think of the trusted advisors that you had, the mentors that you had throughout your career, what was some advice they gave you where you first thought, makes no sense, I'm gonna ignore this because I know better, and later it turned out maybe there was some hidden wisdom in what they told you?
So I think probably one of the best pieces of mentoring I got was in my first corporate job. I worked for a big health insurance company, and I was one of these guys. I would do anything. Like, you just kind of point me in the right direction, I'll figure it out and I'll do it, right? And it was very non-techy, the job I was doing, and so I went in and I asked him for a raise. Like, I want, hey, how do I make more money, right? And he said, sometimes you have to move out to move up. And it's at the time, I didn't understand what that meant really. But it later in my career that really started to resonate, like, oh, sometimes the best way to expand your horizon is to find a new challenge, right? And that's really what it boiled down to. And sometimes finding that new challenge was finding a new job, but other times it was finding ways to, do something radically different in the same organization that I was in. And that has served me through my entire career. I think the other piece of wisdom is, I had a CIO sit me down and say, where do you want to be? And I said, well, I want to be in your chair. And he goes, okay, well, then you have to start being me. And I'm like, what does that mean? And it was like, okay, well, whatever. And what I what I realized was, oh, he's asking me to be groomed. So sometimes there, again, it goes back to listening. Sometimes you have to listen for that intent to understand what is the message. And I ultimately, I never got his job, but I understood that, hey, if I look at model my behavior and kind of behave in this way, I have that shot, and ultimately ended up becoming a CIO.
Yeah. But kudos to you. It takes some courage to actually say that to someone, that I want your chair. How did he react, or she? How did the person react initially?
So initially, he was. I think it's what he was expecting. I've always been very ambitious, and I was never really shy about sharing. That's actually something else that has served me quite well. Is, I've never been one to like be quiet about how I feel or what's going on with me and things like that. And I think when you do share those vulnerabilities, it really opens you up for a deeper conversation and relationship that you just can't get any other way.
You can't if you stay at the surface. Absolutely.
Right.
When you think of your own toolkit as a leader, the things that you do as a leader, the conversations that you're having as a leader, what's your favorite thing to do? And I don't mean this favorite as enjoying, but what's sort of the go-to tool if you need something that works in many situations? What kind of conversation or what kind of behavior would you pull from?
Show me. So a lot of times misunderstandings come from not a clear, I understand what you're saying and you understand what I'm saying. And so oftentimes when I get into a situation that is like, I want a certain outcome for this person, or I want them to take a certain direction, and they're resistant, I ask them, show me why, show me how you're doing that. So, and oftentimes I learn more in those instances than any other time that, like, there's self-learning, right? I go and I look and watch YouTube videos and watch really smart people like you talk about really cool things. But a lot of times it's taking that simple, tiny moment to really get into the other person's shoes. Show me what's happening. Show me why it's happening. Show me how I could do better, right? Like, those are all ways to get someone both engaged with your leadership and help them on their journey of being a leader, right? That's really what I ultimately try and get to.
Yep. We've talked about your past journey. I would love to take a look at today now. Now, when you look at where you are today, and I don't mean this in terms of company or position or anything like this, it's still about leadership journey. And you're describing where you are in your growth, in your own development as a leader. What's an area that you're focusing on at the moment? What's an area where you feel, I can do more here? This is a great area to level up, or this is something that's worth spending some energy on for me right now.
So right now, like probably everybody else on the planet, AI is, just a phenomenal tool, right? It really has allowed me to kind of challenge myself in ways that I didn't think was even possible, to be honest. And using it in ways that aren't, it's great if you ask it a question and it gives you an answer, but it's way more interesting if you model like a conversation. Like, if you're going to have a difficult conversation, using AI to kind of role play with you, right? Which is sometimes uncomfortable to do with people, which it shouldn't be, but it is. But with AI, it gives you kind of at least a sounding board. So I've been doing a lot of exploring in the AI world and what it means, how it works, what does the tooling look like? How does it help, not just in the tech world, but in life, right? And that, like, I had a conversation this morning with people. So, and we were talking about, hey, how does AI help you?
Yep. So what would you say is the best use for a leader at the moment? What do you say?
For AI specifically?
Right.
So I really see AI as a way for leaders to get better at leading, because it can take a lot of data really, really fast and summarize it and bring it back to you. Of course, you got to verify it, and there's all that other stuff that comes with AI. But it can surface things that honestly I would have never found on my own, right? It's just not possible to see that much of the internet. So it's
Right.
really cool from that standpoint.
Yep, got it. Yep. Let's take a look at the future. And we all don't have a perfect crystal ball. It's always a bit foggy there. But when you think about your leadership in the future, let's go down 3-5 years. What do you think might be different then? If we were to have this conversation in a few years, what do you think might have changed about your perspective, your tools on leadership, the way you lead? What might be different then?
I think probably the biggest thing for me is I think as a leader at this stage in my career, I'm really looking for that legacy that I leave behind, and what did I contribute? And I really feel like at that time, I really want to be able to articulate that better. Right now, that's unclear for me. I can point to a few case studies and things that I've done that I'm really super proud of. And I'm sure I'm going to run into more of those, but really finding things that make a difference is so hard right now. And I think investing in people is probably the best use of time and effort. So my future, I'm looking forward to mentoring more, finding opportunities to mentor outside my field, and really just helping what the next generation is. And maybe I get lucky and someday somebody gets on a call like this with you and says, hey, I had that one thing that guy said to me, and it was so smart and so wise, and it really propelled my career. That will look like success to me.
Awesome. Yeah. Let me ask you one last question, Dave, and then we're going to land the plane here. When you look at other tech leaders, peers in other organizations, people you know who are in similar roles that you are, what do you think is something that many of them are not seeing and you see it? When you look at what they're doing, is there something that you feel many are missing out there?
It's weird that I said this. I'm really interested in AI. I'm doing a lot with that. I think there's a lot of leaders that still misunderstand how people work, right? Like, it's not a one-way thing, right? I don't dictate how things should go. Much like an AI, right? If you really want AI to be good, you have to give it room to be good. I think you have to do the same thing with people. I think you have to give them runway and places where they can fail, and be okay with the failure. And I think a lot of people struggle with that, like how to lead by failing, and not it be wrong or bad, but an opportunity to learn. And I think a lot of people miss that.
Yeah. What I also hear there is giving people a wider range of doing something, right? Giving maybe in terms of the decision they make, maybe the areas where they can apply themselves, just to open the aperture and allow for more.
Yeah, it's so much easier when you give a person a wider view for them to make a better choice, right? Yeah. We oftentimes compartmentalize and silo information. And a lot of times in doing that, we're setting our staff and our employees and people that see us, we're setting them up for failure because we have the big picture, right? Because we're the leaders. But if you don't give your staff that big picture, they can't be leaders, right? They have no concept of the big picture.
Yeah. Got it. Dave, thank you so much. Been an absolute pleasure having you in the conversation here. I'll remember for a long time the start here. I like people. That's one of the strokes. That was awesome. Dave, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joseph.
To everyone else out there, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. And most importantly, join us again for our next episode on the Top Innovator series. And until then, make sure to keep your brain cells active.